Hello, Chinook and Steelhead members. Bob Reese here with the Guides Forecast. Thank you for being subscribers. Here is your forecast for Friday, August 13th. Friday, as a lot of people already know, is probably the second busiest day on the water besides Saturday. So, going to be busy tomorrow. Oftentimes it's busier than Sunday. The tides are shaping up to be good for morning fishing. What makes the morning such a nice option, just, despite the fact that I hate mornings and I'd rather do a 9:30 start like I did today, is that you have the added element of fish like to feed the heaviest in the morning, coupled with a high tide to go with it. Now we're going to miss high tide by about an hour, but nonetheless, we're going to have I think it's a 4:30 a.m. high tide, and we'll get to fish the first part of the outgoing tide without it really ripping. Now, it'll be going pretty strong on the Washington side because there's 40 to 60 minute difference between the high tide effect on the Washington side versus the Oregon side. So I'm going to find myself starting on the Oregon side. There was fish caught early this morning on the Oregon side before it petered out when the tide really started cooking. We're going to have another strong outgoing tide again tomorrow. I think not quite 7.5 foot, but over 7 foot run out. So we're going to see some pretty fast trolls, during max ebb, which will probably be from about probably about 7 o'clock till about 10 o'clock. There'll be a lot of fast trolling and not many biting salmon. It really depends on how many fish come in the river tomorrow night, and the run is certainly building. That's becoming pretty clear right now. We're marking a lot of fish even though they're not all snapping. So we're in it right now, you guys. Time to come fishing. So those that start at the crack of dawn, I'm starting at 5:30. We should have some opportunities right from the get-go. Again, I'm starting on the Oregon side because it shouldn't be cooking as fast as it will be on the Washington side first thing. Sorry for the yawn. And then as the tide slows, you'll find yourself lower in the estuary. There was a good little bite in the deep water. We're talking like the 53 to 60 foot water in front of the church. And what's amazing is that a lot of the fish that were snapping were not deep. They were, guides were catching them just a short 12 or 13 strips out. The top 15 foot of the water column on that screaming outgoing tide, where theoretically, there's a lot of water velocity, but those fish were in that power water, and even more strange, they were biting in that power water. So right in the strong part of the ebb today, there was maybe a 40 or 50 minute window where guides and other sport anglers were catching a fair number, not wide open fishing, but a fair number of fish on that smoking outgoing tide in the church hole. So that may again be the scenario tomorrow. It oftentimes is, even on these bigger tides. So and then standard procedure, as we've talked about, being down low on the low part of the outgoing tide, both on the Washington and the Oregon side. Now I'll oftentimes try and hit the last part of outgoing tide on the Washington side with everybody else, but then as it starts to slow down, actually start coming in on the Washington side, not a bad idea to shift over to the red buoy line there, from buoy 14 to buoy 12, buoy 12 to buoy 10. We found 4 or 5 more biters because we get to catch the last trickle of outgoing tide on the Oregon side, because again, things happen 30 or 40 minutes later on the Oregon side just by the hydrology of how the ocean water enters the river and exits the river. So a drastic difference between both sides of the river. Oh, I think I need a little more sleep. And then the incoming tide, these fish are biting on the incoming too, not exceptionally well on the incoming tide, but the ham and hover in the second half of incoming did produce bites for us and for a handful of guides that were still down low in the estuary. It'll be a wild card as to whether the coho come in the river tomorrow on the flood tide. I'm guessing not. I think they got scattered again with the south wind influence that we had. So don't count on a buoy 10 coho bite, even though it's a fairly strong incoming tide. But there were Chinooks caught a little bit later in the tide down low by the Chinook wing jetties, and as I mentioned at Hammond, and that should set itself up as a scenario for tomorrow as well. So of course, you guys also have the afternoon option as well. There's a second high tide in the daylight hours, and the evening tide's been fishing real well. So you got some options to catch high tide at the bridge, above the bridge, the downstream troll from the anchorage on the Oregon side all the way down to Hammond. We found most of the biters late this afternoon right at the bridge. So for those that want to do a late start or are going to put in a long day, there will be a good opportunity for more Chinooks close to high tide. Certainly on the Oregon side, I'm confident. The Washington side, there should be opportunities over there as well, close to high tide in the first part of outgoing. So we had a low wind day today on Thursday. I'm not sure it was a nice change from what we've been experiencing in recent days. So hopefully, if the valley cools down, we won't have a big wind issue here, but wind has certainly been the headline news for all summer long down here on the coast. So, I've been running a lot of anchovies. The spin fish are still working good. That chrome with a chartreuse head is not going down a whole bunch, but you can't overlook the strike to hook ratios that we're seeing on the spin fish. They're certainly better than they are on bait. A lot of guides caught fish on the 3.5 spinners today. So especially on the last part of that outgoing tide, when you have a lot of warm river water influence in the estuary, spinners took a lot of fish today on Thursday. So don't overlook the spinner option with the Pro Trolls through the weekend and through the season for that matter. So it's all working. Pro Trolls and spinners, Pro Trolls and spinfish, Pro Trolls and whole anchovies. I'm going to start running a little more herring. The herring are just a more durable bait when you're rigging holes. So one of my guide buddies has always fished the plug cut blue labels, and he's catching lots of fish. So get them spinning. Keep them on the deck on the outgoing tide, and don't be afraid to fish shallow on the flood. I'm talking 8, 10, 11 strips. That's on line counters. That's 18 to 20, 22 foot deep. So these biters are running shallow, especially on the flood tide, and even on the outgoing tide, as I mentioned, the church hole bite this morning. So as I said in the report, lots of boats on the water. Stay safe, pay attention, and get out and go fishing. It's going to be a good weekend for catches. The early part of this run, a lot of the 5-year-old fish are taken, so we're going to see a fair number of fish in the 20-pound class. These fish are eating well, especially the coho, which won't come in until later, but these Chinook are going to be a great grade this weekend. 4-year-olds start showing up after, in better numbers after about the 20th of August. So looking for a big fish, make sure you're properly geared up for it. I'm running a 50-pound test leader and Dacron line, and of course the 200-pound bumper that goes right to the flasher. So I've had many a years where I've underperformed, underestimated, a 30-pound test, a 40-pound test, and I'm strictly 50-pound test right now, which is can be hard to rig a whole herring or a plug cut bait but it's working, certainly with spinners and certainly with spinfish. No reason to go with leaders any lighter than 50-pound test. So I think that's about it for the forecast. If I leave any details out, I'll put it in the newsletter that goes to print at 10 o'clock tonight if I get my act together. Take good care.